Alright guys, so let's finish The Undiscovered Self by Carl Jung. The meaning of self-knowledge. So chapter 7, the meaning of self-knowledge. What our age thinks of as the shadow, an inferior part of the psyche, contains more than something merely negative. The very fact that through self-knowledge, i.e. by exploring our own souls, we come upon the instincts in their world of imagery, should throw some light on the powers slumbering in the psyche, of which we are seldom aware so long as all goes well. There are potentialities of the greatest dynamism, and it depends entirely on the preparedness and attitude of the conscious mind, whether the eruption of these forces and the images and ideas associated with them will tend towards construction or catastrophe. The psychologist seems to be the only person who knows from experience how precarious the psychic preparedness of modern man is, for he is the only one who sees himself compelled to seek out in man's nature those helpful forces and ideas which over and over have enabled the individual to find the right way through darkness and danger. For this exacting work, the psychologist requires all his patience. He may not rely on any traditional oughts and musts, leaving the other person to make all the effort and contenting himself with the easy role of advisor and admonisher. Everyone knows the futility of preaching about things that are desirable, yet the general helplessness in this situation is so great and the need so dire that one prefers to repeat the old mistake instead of raking one's brains over a subjective problem. Besides, it is always a question of treating one single individual only and not 10,000, where the trouble one takes would ostensibly have more impressive results, though one knows well enough that nothing has happened at all unless the individual changes. The effect on all individuals which one would like to see realized may not set in for hundreds of years, for the spiritual transformation of mankind follows the slow tread of the centuries and cannot be hurried or held up by any rational process of reflection, let alone brought to fruition in one generation. What does lie within our reach, however, is the change in individuals who have or create an opportunity to influence others of like mind in their circle of acquaintance. I do not mean by persuading or preaching. I am thinking rather of the well-known fact that anyone who has insight into his own action and has thus found access to the unconscious and voluntarily exercises an influence on his environment, the deepening and broadening of his consciousness produce the kind of effect which the primitives call mana. It is an unintentional influence on the unconscious of others, a sort of unconscious prestige, and its effect lasts only so long as it is not disturbed by conscious intention. Nor does the striving for self-knowledge altogether shun the prospect of social amelioration, since there exists a factor which, though completely disregarded, meets our expectations halfway. This is the unconscious zeitgeist. It compensates the attitude of the conscious mind and anticipates changes to come. An excellent example of this is modern art. Though seeming to deal with aesthetic problems, it is really performing a work of psychological education on the public by breaking down and destroying their previous aesthetic views of what is beautiful in form and meaningful in content. The pleasingness of the artistic product is replaced by chill abstractions of the most subjective nature which brusquely slam the door on the naive and romantic delight in the senses and their obligatory love for the object. This tells us in plain and universal language that the prophetic spirit of art has turned away from the old object relationship and towards the, for the time being, dark chaos of subjectivisms. Certainly art, so far as we can judge of it, has not yet discovered in this darkness what it is that holds all men together and could give expression to their psychic wholeness. Since reflection seems to be needed for this purpose, it may be that such discoveries are reserved for other fields of endeavor. Great art till now has always derived its fruitfulness from the myth, from the unconscious process of symbolization, which continues through the ages and which, as the primordial manifestation of the human spirit, will continue to be the root of all creation in the future. The development of modern art with its seemingly nihilistic trend towards disintegration must be understood as a symptom and symbol of a mood of world destruction and world renewal that has set its mark on our age. This mood makes itself felt everywhere, politically, socially, and philosophically. We are living in what the Greeks called the kapu, the right time for a metamorphosis of the gods, i.e. of the fundamental principles and symbols. This peculiarity of our time, which is certainly not of our conscious choosing, is the expression of the unconscious man within us who is changing. Coming generations will have to take account of this momentous transformation if humanity is not to destroy itself through the might of its own technology and science. As at the beginning of the Christian era, so again today we are faced with the problem of the moral backwardness which has failed to keep pace with our scientific, technical, and social developments. As at the beginning of the Christian era, so again today we are faced with the problem of the moral backwardness which has failed to keep pace with our scientific, technical, and social developments. So much is at stake and so much depends on the psychological constitution of modern man. Is he capable of resisting the temptation to use his power for the purpose of staging a world conflagration? Let me read that again. Is he capable of resisting the temptation to use his power for the purpose of staging a world conflagration? Is he conscious of the path he is treading and what the conclusions are that must be drawn from the present world situation and his own psychic situation? Does he know that he is on the point of losing the life-preserving myth of the inner man, which Christianity has treasured up for him? Does he realize what lies in store should this catastrophe ever befall him? Is he even capable at all of realizing that this would be a catastrophe? And finally, does the individual know that he is the make-weight that tips the scales? Happiness and contentment, equability of soul, and meaningfulness of life, these can be experienced only by the individual and not by a state, which on the one hand is nothing but a convention of independent individuals, and on the other continually threatens to paralyze and suppress the individual. The psychiatrist is one of those who know most about the conditions of the soul's welfare, upon which so infinitely much depends in the social sum. The social and political circumstances of the time are certainly of considerable significance, but their importance for the weal or woe of the individual has been boundlessly overestimated, insofar as they are taken for the sole deciding factors. In this respect, all our social goals commit the error of overlooking the psychology of the person for whom they are intended, and very often of promoting only his illusions. I hope therefore that a psychiatrist who in the course of a long life has devoted himself to the causes and consequences of psychic disorders may be permitted to express his opinion in all the modesty enjoined upon him as an individual about the questions raised by the world situation today. I am neither spurred on by excessive optimism nor in love with high ideals, but am merely concerned with the fate of the individual human being, that infinitesimal unit on whom a world depends, and in whom, if we read the meaning of the Christian message aright, even God seeks his goal. I am neither spurred on by excessive optimism, nor in love with high ideals, but am merely concerned with the fate of the individual human being, that infinitesimal unit on whom a world depends, and in whom, if we read the meaning of the Christian message aright, even God seeks his goal.